Hello, everyone. I'm here with my dear friend Georgia Takacs. So, this is what we're going to do. This is a unique conversation. Georgia is an astrologer. She's an old friend of mine. She lives in the UK, and she's created an organization called All Our Relations that's all about feeding people in Gaza. That's what it's about. This is going to be an astrological conversation, focus around Jupiter and Cancer and maybe some other themes. I want to start off by just clarifying and expressing why we're doing this, why this is so meaningful and so important to me. Other than just speaking about astrology and offering teachings and insights on the astrology, this conversation, and perhaps one of many, is an opportunity to cultivate a real direct experience and insight into the astrology as it's a lived reality, not just theoretical, not just conceptual, but something that's actually living and alive. We're going to really delve into an archetypal reality that's breathing, that's moving, and expand our insight and our knowledge in a very Jupiterian way, actually. And this is also happening in a way that really meets with our prayer. And I think many of you watching share this prayer to heal, to be a part of a healing journey, and to bridge where there's been pain, where there's been suffering, and to bring more love and to restore more love in this world and between us in our relationships. So what I'm going to do is um, offer a little perspective on uh, how I came to learn about this work, and then I'm going to invite Georgia to speak about all our relations, and we're just going to be weaving in astrological knowledge. Um, I would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, your questions, especially if you're wanting to learn more about all our relations. Please be welcome to write in the comments as well as emailing Georgia. We'll put all that information in the description, including a link to get involved and to offer donations, and you're going to learn all about it. So I'm going to start by saying this. This is kind of where this whole thing began for me. I think when there's pain and there's suffering in the world, especially if it's far away or relative to a people that maybe we're not connected to. So me as a Jew, I've spoken a lot about this. Up until recently in my life, I've never had any Palestinian friends. And I grew up for the first 19 years of my life really in engulfed in a very Jewish reality exclusively, pretty much. And so from a Jupiter and Cancer perspective, you know, other people's personal lives, their experience of home, their culture, their reality, that which is foreign, literally, physically, but energetically, it's unknown to me. As we can all understand, it's harder to relate, it's harder to feel empathy, it's harder to care, right? The further someone is from our own sense of identity, the harder it is to really meet and connect and feel like they're a part of our life. But then the more we know someone, the more we understand someone, the more we can find ourselves in that. The more we can find them in ourselves, the more we care. And sometimes it just takes, one relative living in Gaza or in any place that's war torn, that's suffering, a friend that you met during a summer camp when you were in high school. There's just one little link of connection is often enough for us to feel like, oh, some of my heart is there. I know someone there. And I think when it comes to the suffering in this world, where a lot of us kind of feel like a little lost, is there's almost this, on one level, this feeling, a Saturn, like I should do something. And there are all these organizations and ways to get involved. And, maybe I should say something or stand up for something or post something, or maybe there's a place I can donate. There's often this sense of how do I get involved? But there can actually be a lot of guilt and tension in that, wherein there's sort of an absence of who am I helping? Who are the people that I'm actually caring for? It's abstract. Like, okay, I'll put in $5 to this tzedakah box, this donation box, and $5 into this donation box, and but but where's the relationship? And I think without that, it's almost like either this obligatory thing that we feel we need to do, or we just don't go there because it feels really heavy, and there's a lot of judgmental energy around it. There's a lot of like, you should care about this, and of course, a lot of people in the world will be like, you shouldn't care. You should care about this. No, don't care about that. Care about this. And I kind of like to take the stance of not invalidating the things that people care about or the nations or the cultures or the ethnicities that people are concerned about. I like to take the stance of just expanding my concern, expanding my care to include more. So caring about Palestinian people is never contrary to caring about Jewish or Israeli people. And one cause of suffering can exist simultaneously to another, and this is not a competition. As I've taught, like that Jupiter and Cancer, even it's moving beyond that square, but just the relationship between that square to Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is very competitive. It's very protective. I feel my security, my people, it's under threat. And so there can be a lot of protection, a lot of isolation, a lot of waging war. So I think what the world needs right now is more caring. It's not about dropping our ideology or our identity, our sense of belonging. And remind me as we talk, I want to introduce this later on and not talk so much right now, but an experience I had last night at the synagogue. If I forget, bring it up. Um,
Oh, okay.
More of you are important, your well-being. Hey, you have children too. I have children too. Ooh, I don't want your children to suffer. And I think the more we don't understand someone, the easier it is to dehumanize them. They don't really suffer. I'm on it. We can do that with animals just as much as we can do it with human beings, and we have to kind of work our hearts around how do we want to reconcile with this. I remember I went to this is totally unrelated, but I I'm not a vegan by any means, but I was for a time, and I once took a group of Jewish kids to a Jewish slaughterhouse, and the chickens were hanging on the conveyor belt, and for a while before they're slaughtered, and the shochet, the rabbi there, said, no, they don't suffer though, and it was like this, like they don't really suffer, and it's just so contrary to my heart. Right? If you just kind of see another, even if you're going to eat an animal, to just be able to feel that there's an existent conscious sentience that cares, that feels, that's aware, that loves actually just like we do. There's a dimension of conscience to every being. And I guess I bring that up because in a very similar way, I've heard many Jewish people speak about Palestinian people almost as if they're animals. And honestly, until I actually began to meet other Palestinian people for many years in my life, even if I wasn't consciously identified with that belief, it was still sort of a subset. And you see it in media. It's like if a
Mhm.
Westerner or an Israeli dies, like the link, it's like almost like their lives can easily be held as more precious, more important than, oh, 100 Palestinian people. It's like it's kind of not as important. A lot of this is just so yeah. I'll bring up the synagogue thing, and also I'll write down the things that I'll come to. But I wanted to stop there and just invite you to step forward. And I would love to hear what all our relations is about, how it came about, how you were, how it was born through your own experience, and what led you towards this.
Thank you so much, Ari. And I just want to take this moment to just thank you so much again for inviting me on and to speak about this and share with you. Um, and it's been beautiful to reconnect just in general. But yeah, to share about all our relations. And it was such a it was something that was so organic. You look back and you just think, how did I even get here? It's like you floated here. And I guess, and it was, I feel that I'm true to that Jupiter energy. It just feels that my this present moment, I am where I'm meant to be and doing what I'm meant to be doing. But when I reflect back on how, okay, then how did this really come about? What was the path? Um, I guess I would speak first of all to something that you just brought up beautifully around well, I think, did you speak to the fact that it does correspond to the Cancer archetype, which is this heart to heart human connection and care, which I have the moon in the fourth, and I have the south node in Cancer, so I have quite strong Cancerian energy in my own chart, and it's something I've always greatly valued in any human being. In fact, I've always said to myself, if when I pass, I have a lot of Saturn, I have a lot of Capricorn, so it's a lot about what can I achieve? What can be my legacy when I pass away? But really, when it comes down to it, I always think to myself, if at my funeral, what's said about me is that I made people feel heard, feel seen, feel safe, feel cared for, just on that like one-to-one heart-to-heart human connection, then I will feel satisfied and complete with my time here on this planet. Like that's how I feel. And I think that really came through to me with with my astrology practice. So, like for context, and of course, you being an evolutionary astrologer, I'm a practicing evolutionary astrologer now for about 8 years. And I believe about 8 years, yeah. And I realized something quite quickly into it that, when it comes to care and healing, as you spoke to, Ari, um, we often associate when we think of healing, we think of, I feel like we often think of that Piscean energy, Virgo, like the Pisces Virgo axis. But so much is there around cancer. What I realized is that, we could have all the tools and all the knowledge and all the, physical and mental know-how. But if we weren't connecting with the heart space and meeting that unique individual human being where they are in this exact moment of authentic emotional
Mm, mm,
experience, right? If we're not doing that, which requires us to connect with and open our own hearts, which is a vulnerability, right? To meet the vulnerability of another, we first must be vulnerable in ourselves. And I think I noticed that that was what defined any kind of success I had through sessions. If I had any positive, good impact through my practice, it was just by virtue of the fact that I was flexing that muscle per se, right? Quote unquote muscle, my heart muscle, right? And I so I realized, okay, this is my devotional path. This is the path, especially because we notice the gaping open wound of our planet right now, of our mother, the mother wound that pervades every part of ourselves and every part of our society, cancer. And, our friend Tim Halloran, I'll always, acknowledge him for this incredible, simple, and such important teaching to me, which is that cancer is the missing medicine of our age.
mhm, mhm.
And it's so often the answer, and it just comes back. And we're in Cancer season right now. Jupiter's in Cancer, obviously, so I think, and that truth really came through to me when it came to post October 7th. So I was a new mother. And that was a very key part of this journey too, right? And in these recent years, you've obviously become a father too. And it's again, and it's kind of, I guess, it really connects with that Jupiter in Cancer transit that we're going through right now, is that you can have all the philosophies and conceptualization of what mothering, parenting, caring for children um, really means, right? That really rooted human experience, right? Cancer is at the root of the natural zodiac, that base. And we can have so many conceptual ideas of it, but there's something that happens when you become a parent, I feel, or you become the caretaker of a young child, that protection, that instinct that kicks in that nothing else can replace. I mean, all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, I understand my parents on this whole other level. And the cry of my own child would just pierces into your soul, and nothing can, your entire being is then reoriented around how do I tend to this child's suffering and meet it and be with it and tend to it. And and then I guess what happened is, of course, after October 7th, I was hearing and seeing live streamed the screams and the cries of tens of thousands of children. Gaza is a tiny strip of land, which is the size of like slightly larger or slightly smaller, I believe, actually, than the size of East London. And I spent a lot of time living in East London, it's not that big. And, it's tiny. Plus, it's this phenomenon where people can't leave freely at all. And it's one of the most densely populated places in the world, and 50% of the population are children. And 6 or 7 Hiroshima bombs worth of explosives have been dropped on that area of land in the last 20 months. I mean, just those couple of facts alone is enough to just really understand. We don't even need to. This is again where we come back to the simplicity here, like the heart, the humanity. There is so much surrounding this issue, but honestly, just the fact that that many explosives has been dropped onto an entrapped population that is mostly children. And and it's been live streamed. It's the most documented genocide in history, and it's been live streamed to us every day, especially on Instagram, which is what I was on and watching it. And I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I every time Leo was slightly hungry, my little boy, he's almost 3 now. I just thought like he's hungry. He's been hungry for 1 minute, and I can barely. My partner, even he's a father, and he notices how, for me, my whole world stops until and I have to really focus on my self-regulation so that I can remain centered and do what I can do to solve the problem. Because how do I feed this child? And I just couldn't help but think of all the parents that just had to watch their children starve and are helpless. And I think what really became apparent for me was that, at the time I was still fully practicing astrology. My practice was actually thriving more than it ever had done. And I have a Taurus moon and my roots were very stable. And I was able, have my own home with my partner and quite a fruitful practice. Um, but my Uranus was passing over my moon in Taurus, and I uprooted that
Mm.
stability
Mm.
entirely.
Wow.
I just went,
Wow.
I know that it seems crazy, but I'm actually going to throw away the stability of this practice in this moment. I can't focus on it because the children in the earth are crying and dying. And it is true that Jupiter in Cancer is turning up the volume of those cries even more at
Mm.
this time.
Wow.
And I think it's forcing us to confront. And, again, this isn't just in Gaza. We live in a world, a Capricornian paradigm that is literally built on the foundations of genocide and ecocide. Its very success, its growth relies on the children and the earth crying and dying. Like that's it. So what's happening is just kind of exposing where suffering and of the most vulnerable, right? Mothers and children, the care and protection of them should really be at the heart of our society,
Mm.
but goddess knows that is quite the opposite that we have in this time. And so I think, though, again, as you say, though, Ari, it's always going to feel so much more abstract until you speak to a human being in Gaza one to one. That intimacy, I think, was already closed in when I was just seeing photo videos of, like, up close mothers weeping over their own children, or children that were just covered in shrapnel wounds. And I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't focus. And I think, though, that then compelled me to, how do I get closer here? Because I have to do something. But again, as you say, there's that call to do something. But I didn't really I had some finances, but I really didn't have much to give financially. What I knew that I could first give was well, yeah, time and experience has taught me that, okay, the Cancerian gift, something I value so much that has changed and altered my life irrevocably, is that heart-to-heart human connection and presence. I will say, I will speak the name of a particular person that always sticks out to me in this case, which is Mackenzie Alexander.
Mm.
That has been a portal for so much healing for me. She has, and as a woman, and she has Chiron and Cancer. There's always like beautiful healing there. She has a lot of Cancer energy, I believe, if I remember correctly. But I just always think back to that, and that's something that, okay, I can do that, I can be that. So um, it just happened that because I was sharing a lot about what was going on, people started to reach out. And this has been this very unique, I think, opportunity for humanity, I think, at this time, is that because Gazans are trapped, isolated, they have very limited and now little to no support. They have been forced to reach out via Instagram and TikTok mainly to the outside Western world, to anyone who will help them, because there is nothing, and the inflation is so high, the cost of everything is so extortionate that it is necessary for their daily survival. The other thing, this is very interesting, is that Palestinian bank accounts cannot connect to PayPal accounts or to GoFundMe's. So they don't even have that sovereignty and agency to set up their own fundraising pages. That's been where the key is, Ari, is that this was at so much the foundation, is that those sort of relationships were forced to forge. because they
Wow.
had to reach out and say, just on a kind of practical level, please could you help facilitate a fundraising page for me so that I can at least just share my own story on Instagram and get some money. And of course, it created this connection, right? This one-to-one connection. So that happened to me with about three families that I was supporting in this way. And I realized that
So you saw their post and then you made a connection with them.
actually they reached, yes, I think in one or two cases it was that I saw their posts, but actually I think more so it was that they reached out to me. They were seeing anyone that was showing any empathy for what was happening in Gaza. People were just saying, okay, would you support me in some way? Would you set up a PayPal for me? I'll give you my ID, I'll do anything. And this was the key thing at the time, Ari, and you know, we were in a key astrological moment with the Libra Aries. No, the nodal axis was in Libra Aries and the eclipses were along there. There was a key Libra eclipse that happened just before October 7th, and then it was the Chiron in Aries
Oh yeah.
activation
Hmm.
happening. My God, I mean, that was the turning point for me. I think that was in like early 2024, right? Just before we
Yeah.
started all our
Yeah.
relations. And what that brought forth for me was the crippling loneliness. That, as you say, Ari, suffering is not um, specific to any group of people that we can say, okay, they're the victims, right? Or like they're, but what, absolutely, Israeli children right now, missiles have been raining down, and they're just as bewildered and terrified as Palestinian children have been for the last 20 months. But what we can say for sure is that the acute loneliness that is unlike any loneliness that I could ever have fathomed, the violence of that loneliness, these were people that were, and I will speak to a specific family story of one of the families that we in all our relations we are, as you know, Ari, like the foundation of it was direct, very tailored support to families. And so it's a limited number. It means that we can't do that for hundreds of families, but we have 21 families and their extended families that we've been in touch with for a year now. Each family has their own family liaison. And so there's that daily like connection with what are their ever-changing needs and circumstances and how can we best hear them and connect with them and support that, right? And this, yes, does include food, but it includes shelter, shelter repair, rent, if that's applicable to them with the remaining buildings that are left in Gaza. Um, and also just other logistical needs and medicine, things like that, whatever we can help. Um, but one of the first families of all our relations was a family that I had been connecting with and had some of my sole attention for a couple of months. And I basically stepped outside of my astrology practice and was just fully focused on this one family and mostly. And it was Samar Galan, her husband Hisham, and their little boy Hamoud. And I think this particular connection was made because so overwhelmingly for me, because when she reached out, her little boy Hamoud, s- a week apart from my little boy Leo,
Oh.
no, and she's a young mother, first time mother, same age. Her partner looks extremely like my partner Aris, like beyond. It's actually incredible, and they have the same job. And she is an English teacher and or was. And her mood looks and acts so much like my little boy. And there are so many families that I've connected with and I support that don't necessarily have these like very immediate similarities. But with Samar, it was just so uncanny. And it just naturally happened that we would just talk all day and all night. And I would be, rocking Leo on my lap and messaging her,
Hmm.
knowing that she was in Gaza in a tent, hearing bombs go off constantly around her while she was leaning over her sleeping little boy Hamoud, same age. And I did whatever I could to understand their story, to amplify their story. I created videos and, you know, what I couldn't stop thinking about again is the loneliness and that she would wake up every morning and just open her tent and look out over a sea of tents and think, I'm just one more person in a sea of people that have lost everything and the world isn't seeing us. We're having to scream to ask for people to even give an ounce of care for our humanity, and if our children have as much value as even, a hundredth of an Israeli child, for example, or a British child or a Ukrainian child. And I just thought this can't happen. Even if this was the foundation of all our relations, is that even if I can relieve the loneliness and remind one family, one human being that they are not alone and that someone cares about them. And that's the Cancer energy, right? It is it's the archetype of the mother, but ultimately it connects to the root of that. The source of that is the primordial mother. It's the lap of the mother that we can always relax on, rest on, and say, I'm safe here, I'm loved here unconditionally, I'm cared for. And my God, the people of Palestine, well, of Gaza and of Palestine now, like they, there aren't words for how much every single thing around them is against that truth. It's a surprise that any of them would retain any. And I've seen psychotic breaks recently of people that have absolutely, what is the world is against me. I mean, I think the only thing, by the way, that has rooted the people of Palestine, people of Gaza, is their faith, is that, they do have a connection with a higher being of a God that loves them and that cares about them, and that ultimately there is some kind of benevolence here. Without that, goddess knows where they would be, quite frankly. But on a human level, like, and this is why I knew, even beyond money, beyond what I could physically or like financially sort of facilitate for these families in Gaza, if I could even just meet them heart to heart and let them know, remind them that there's so much violence, of violence of just, just heartlessness, that how can we be remedy to that? And Lord Goddess knows it's restoring my own heart.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
is, God, like Ari, what we do to others, we do to ourselves. We know this, right? We are, by virtue of the fact that we live in countries that are doing this to a whole other peoples, and are justifying it, and as you say, diluting it, the dehumanization of that, the amount of injury that it is causing us on a daily level, to say, okay, my privilege and my relative societal stability, my relative comfort, all the comfort, the safety of our country, all these things is that, I'm paying for it. Tax dollars are going to
Yeah.
this. The injury of that. So we have to intercept that however we can, because Goddess knows we don't know what the time what is coming beyond this in the near future. I think the war machine has yet to rage on. Of course, I hope that one hopes. I think we need a miracle, and I think miracles are abound at this time on planet Earth. Prophecy has spoken to this time, and I think that we are seeing, we are witnessing, we are going through an astonishing and beyond any laws that we can imagine of initiation and transformation of of humanity. I believe that. And but yeah, I just think that the as you say, it comes back. Sorry, I think I've lost my way a bit there, but it comes back to the immediacy of what do we need to do now for the people that are suffering arguably the most. But again, it's because there is so much systemized, how do we say, like systematic ignoring. And, really by design, how can we ignore
Absolutely.
and hush and make silent, make hidden the humanity and the suffering of these human beings?
Let me reflect a few things that you shared, because this is
Sorry.
this is great. There's so much richness in this. I love what you spoke about, that modern civilization is essentially founded on genocide and ecocide. And that's like, we have to accept that. It's just true. I mean, for those living in the US where I am, that is just fundamentally true. It's true in Israel as well. I mean, this is it's a pervading, and so the solution is literally the opposite of that. I mean, so that's also, you can really think of that as like the distortion of the Capricorn archetype, like the Saturn Capricorn dimension, which is of course what's being really kind of cleansed in a sense right now with the Saturn Neptune. But it's all the delusional ways of thinking are coming up strongly. but it's been embedded for a long time. It's like that distortion energy is Capricorn Saturn corresponds to race and ethnicity and countries. And so we have the whole notion of like, okay, well, this race or this country or this ethnicity is superior, is better. We're entitled. It's this crazy dementia of consciousness that's been prevalent for such a long time that justifies these judgment and these beliefs and these ideas that in so many cases have led to a total ethnic cleansing of entire ethnicities throughout history. And this is the thought that came up, you know, during the Holocaust,
Mm.
the Jews were spoken about as like a thorn in Germany. They're like they're not contributing, they're just taking, they live in their own, they're not integrated. We would be better without them, right? And Hitler was really successful in kind of stoking the existing anti-Semitism and using that to kind of paint this like they're like vermin. I think that's a word that was actually written. They're like vermin, and he succeeded in dehumanizing Jewish people,
Mm.
and it appealed to where people like, yeah, they're other, they're different. I feel very alienated around them. They're just like they're in their own world, and to appeal to that dimension of perception, like to actually see another person as like less human than yourself. That's where like certain groups of people, according to Saturn, like your skin color or Saturn, your country or Saturn, your ethnicity, Saturn, your culture, your society. These are all like the groups and the divisions of the world that we grow up in.
Mm.
We can just grow up with this sense of, and it's happening here in the United States. Literally, some of the language that Stephen Miller, the advisor to Trump, is using around Hispanic people, immigrants, is parallel to what Joseph Goebbels did with Hitler. It's uncanny, the parallels, almost like quoted practically.
Yes.
I would say intentionally. The solution is cancer. Like it's been like the systematic social cultural level orientation to how we are in relationship to humanity, and we've been trying to solve it on that Saturn level, and that's been a mistake. Like governments trying to solve it, trying to negotiate new government or societal or social or arrangements, and the debates of two state, one state. Honestly, I don't think any of that, while there's probably is a place for that dimension, I don't think any of that is where the real healing happens, because it's not addressing the cancer, which is exactly what you're speaking to, exactly what you're living, what you're doing. The cancer dimension is I care about you. And there's a thought that I had. One thing I learned about, I became really interested in like how did it happen that so many people were able to justify the genocide of the Jewish people and other minorities, and how did like regular people just go and follow, become a part of the Gestapo and just go to villages and kill women, children, men, adult, everyone. Just like how did people justify doing that, right? Like regular people, right? And I listened to one video where people were ordered to go into a village and kind of kill all the people in that Jewish village, and in that ghetto. And some people they couldn't do it and they left. They didn't do it. Other people began, and after the first shot, they got sick to their stomach and they just left. Other people, and this is what fascinated me. This is important. They told themselves, well, they're going to be killed anyway. It's kind of inevitable. I may as well just do it now. That right there, because you said something that made me think of that. You don't know, I don't know, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen to the lives of the people in Gaza right now. The deaths are continuing. The murder, it's murder, it's continuing. The intentional starvation is continuing. And it's actually getting less coverage now than it was even earlier on. It's all kind of being swiped underneath with all the other things happening in the world
Why does
every day.
yeah. Yeah.
People going to get food are being shot by Israeli soldiers, literally, and this is true. Like,
Yeah.
this is just not, it's a thing.
One of our team members was his brother was shot two
With
days ago.
that,
One of our team members who
oh,
his brother was shot 2 days ago, so we funded the wake for his brother, just like as to have a little bit of food and some just a few things. But yeah, I mean it's happening every day, as you say.
Happening,
But
happening
like,
in the West Bank too. And there's a lot of violence there, which is hardly getting any coverage. But the point that I want to make is we have to all acknowledge with sort of the Saturn Neptune dimension, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think that can become a point of apathy or an even justification. Well, you're going to die anyway. Clearly, you're going to lose that land, or clearly, Gaza's being ethnically cleansed, and maybe it's better, just kind of if everyone just, leaves now, or a way to kind of close our hearts. And it's like the answer is we don't have control over those things, but we do have control over exactly what you're doing, how we can get involved and support and care about others, feeding people, feeding families. Listen, to everyone here who has a family, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like life, it's innately uncertain, but we know to use this life as best as we can, to cultivate our love, to refine our present, our availability, to become more authentic and more pure in our presence, and to love better, right? To learn how to be a more loving, kind person, and just to constantly improve that. So it's like there's nothing lost in caring about other beings from a soul perspective. Since we're evolutionary astrologers, you are all tuning into an evolutionary astrology channel. The soul journey does not end with a human life. It continues, and these seeds that we plant of care continue on, and they come back. They come back, and the breaking, the end of this cycle is this. It's interesting too. I appreciate the quote that you shared from Timothy, because every planet has a node, right? Every planet has a south and north node, not just the moon. And Jeff Green taught a lot about the sort of the collective history of humanity is reflected in the south node of Pluto being in Capricorn, and Jupiter and Saturn for most souls. It's in Capricorn as well. The north node of all of those planets are in Cancer. There's a collective evolution towards the Cancer archetype, which speaks to, for all souls that are currently incarnate, that south node in Capricorn speaks to all of our lifetimes and our collective soul memory within the context of patriarchy over the descending phase of the most recent Yuga 12,000 arc year cycle, pretty much 5,000-ish past years or so. Now we're beginning to move up, and there's a restoration of that Cancer consciousness, which is healing a lot of the distortions that have been developed over the past several thousand years. So I find that insight to be really relevant, that Cancer archetype and what Cancer represents, how we tend to and care for the feminine, for family, for earth, for each other, is the essence. And you shared this with me when we were chatting a couple of days ago. Did I understand you correctly that you said everyone involved on the team is a mother?
yeah, almost everyone. So we is a woman and a mother. We have like my co-founder Jen. She's a mother. And also, yeah, we have like a core team of us where we're like that we run all the different, like, let's say, departments, so like marketing and fundraising, to just kind of keep it all going, and I'm the director. But then we've also got volunteers as well, of like the family liaisons, so and almost everyone is a mother. We have only one guy, but he's a father, and and a very, like, caring, loving father. And but yeah, and I don't that is not it's not by accident. I mean, it's just so, I find as well, not just in all our relations, but in this movement in general, those that we're connected with that are really active, that are really um you know that this entire moment is burning through them, and they cannot stop themselves from doing something, and they're saying, I actually don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me anymore, or how crazy I look. It's kind of stripping off all of that Capricorn conditioning of like the good woman that just kind of gets, which again, our current Capricornian paradigm relies on women not sort of unleashing that Lilith energy or that Kali energy, but
Hmm.
it's coming forth because it's like again, the children and the earth are crying and dying, and no one, what's going to stop them, what's going to stop this violence, this what's going to rehumanize, what's going to was going to protect with a capital P. What's going to protect what is sacred before it is literally all eviscerated is is the mother energy. And you spoke so beautifully. You mentioned, and I haven't forgotten about it since you shared it, Ari, about how Michelle had that recent insight
Yes.
in the
She had a vision
ceremony.
actually. Yeah.
A vision. And what was it again? How did you describe it?
She'll have to comment 'cause I don't know exactly what it was, but it was like this will be healed, like the whole conflict in Israel Palestine, like some sort of vision where she saw it'll be healed when mothers begin working together.
Wow. And I cannot even, do you know what's phenomenal about this is that you would think what is incredible is that all of the mothers in all our relations, I mean, it is an unstoppable force. There's two things I want to share with that actually, which I think are really important because it comes to how it comes back as well to that this beautiful Saturn sort of Capricorn Cancer teaching, right? Which is the conditioning that we have is it's so much sort of top down and outside in. That's where the authority comes from, that's where the determination of what goes. But that inside out authority and how things are really built from the
Mm,
heart space outwards and
beautiful.
deep, it's so important. And we think it's insignificant and we wait for the permission or we wait for the
Oh,
guidance from the no, no, no. What I have found is that the women at the very core of all our relations is the most beautiful thing that I always hoped would happen with any sort of, I imagined leading some kind of project or organization. It's written into my astrology that I wanted to make some affect some tangible Saturnian change in the world. But I thought, goddess damn it, that needs to have at the very base this kind of community of care within the structure. So
mm,
that basically as a team, we are caring about each other so immensely like we do not let each other, oh, how are you okay? We check in constantly. What is your well-being? How are you? And we begin our every meeting usually as a check-in, often just like what is the emotional state of what we're witnessing right now and holding each other in that and tending to the mental health of us all while we counsel a lot of families. I mean, who has prepared any of us to speak to people one to one? Someone said to me, even like the most trained psychologists in the world have not handled speaking to
mm,
people that are going through what the people in Gaza are going through. So there is such a deep, and honestly, it keeps me fueled and going because I have so much Saturn. We are all conditioned to be human doings rather than human beings, right? Again, that Saturnian expression. And I think so much of the healing, all our relations has been healing for me because there's this mothering energy of like,
oh,
checking in, connection, care, love. We love each other and we care for each other and we are unstoppable force. We're an unstoppable force.
mm,
And it's really interesting that we're all working. Like yeah, all of us are working. So we're finding and we're mothers. So how and I don't even how are we doing what we're doing, but we're doing it because well, who else? No, who else is doing? I mean, like this is the other thing, as you say, Ari. There are organizations out there like Oxfam and Choose Love and big organizations that are absolutely devoting a lot of time, funds, focus on Gaza however they can. But because it is the bigger it is, it's so easy for the heart to heart human connection to slip through the cracks. And so
yes.
even though this, it happens, and there are and I know this because the countless people that I've spoken to on the ground in Gaza, before all our relations, they hadn't felt seen
Mm,
like once. Like they hadn't felt seen or really seen in their utter unimaginable suffering even once. And again, that isn't even the fault of the people on the ground. It's just this wider, larger problem. Um, so again, even if it was only 21 families, and now, by the way, just for that like informational piece we've been able to sort of expand it so that we have also four projects that are community led across the Gaza Strip that are tending to a much wider community level. So we have a daily food kitchen in Khan Yunis, Al Mawasi Khan Yunis. We have like almost daily vegetable parcel distribution across the north of Gaza. Reaching families they don't even have a phone to
mm,
set up a GoFundMe. These are families that would otherwise be entirely hidden. But what's been so beautiful, this has to come if we can. The closer we can get to those suffering, the closer we can really make this an act of solidarity rather than charity.
mm.
because I agree with you. It's
Love that.
so easy from a Capricornian perspective that the whole philanthropic thing is just,
Right.
chuck some change over there. I mean, this is what a lot of rich people do. I mean, it's just written. It's just they put some money over there, they attend an expensive fundraiser and they go, done my piece, walk off. There's no real interaction with the real suffering of what's going on. So, we one of the key acts of solidarity, therefore, is to restore agency.
Mm.
Restore agency. They have been stripped of so much agency. And so it's like, how can we reinstill community strength and community and they're the people that know best. They're on the ground, they're surrounded by their family and friends that are
They're the only
suffering.
ones on the ground. I mean, no one else is able to like you can't just like parachute into Gaza. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. As much as sometimes we feel that we want to be able to go, but you can't.
Let me highlight because a lot of people also this is a big dimension. Most of the time, I think the thing that we lack, well, the thing that we get is like the general overview and sense of like kind of what's happening. What we lack is like what is it actually like there, and it's really meaningful to. And there's no way to really grasp what life is like there and actually how it's structured, how it works, without first getting curious about it and actually meeting people and interacting with them. So I wanted to kind of provide this perspective to the very limited extent to which I'm able to apprehend this. And I think this is like my understanding of Palestinian people in general. Like they're very good at adopting and surviving. And so there's been so much ongoing displacement, but everything that's happening there, it's like they are their service workers. They are the people. Like everyone there is them. It's not
Yes.
like Red Cross is like stepping in, and we have some degree of external humanitarian groups and aids that have come in, but it's very limited and it's also been very dangerous. But as I understand it, it's practically zero. So
Mm.
this is I want to share two things. You spoke about this idea of like the agency coming from within, like the Capricorn authority coming from the inside, not like conforming to an external structure. What you're doing is such a beautiful example of healing the Capricorn archetype because you're establishing a structural reality, a business, a structure, an organization, but that's founded, the heart of it, the essence of it is about what's most important. And that to me is what it looks like to see how we relate to the Saturn archetype heal, which is going to continue healing over the next coming decades and centuries, honestly, where the things that we build and structure in life aren't these like, look at what I've done or these things that I've created. But it's actually about what is the essence of what it's providing? What is the good and service that it's providing for humanity at the heart of it? And is it really working? Is it a really good looking shell, but with a lot of dysfunction on the inside? And this is where a light bulb came up. I love this model because these big organizations that maybe are very universal, one, if there isn't very strong human to human relationships, it's very hard to actually support the resources going in the right place. A lot is lost in these larger philanthropic organizations where there isn't that level of like small family connection. And I feel like the way forward is a lot of this and less of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I love that it's like 20, and for everyone to understand, like 21 families isn't really 21 families because everyone has relatives. So like these families are what's being focused on, but then these families are able to provide for much larger relational network beyond just the nuclear. Like it's one family isn't like how we think of it here in the West. Like one family is going to be like your aunts, your uncles, and your 70 cousins. Like it's huge. It's a very different culture than like the typical Western way of thinking of family. Um,
Mhm.
Again, as someone that has ancestry, much of my ancestry were killed in the Holocaust. I was really touched by stories of Gentiles that took it upon themselves to do whatever they could to protect and save Jews and other people that were under threat in Germany. One example being Schindler, right? So there's that famous, story book and movie, The Schindler's List, right? This reminds me of this because it's like what was real about Schindler was he wasn't abstractly removed. He saw himself in the position where his unique position, he owned a business and he had workers. He was able to use his position to get a whole bunch of Jews to work for him, but he was actually saving them and kind of protecting them. And, so on the outside, he was playing this like German role, but really it was all about protecting and saving these people. It's like if we don't understand that we have the opportunity to directly impact people's lives because it's so far and abstract and removed, we're not going to feel impelled. But when we actually understand that there are real human beings, that this really makes a significant difference. Like the more educated we become about the actual reality there, the more it's like I can imminently get involved. And I think the more people, this is what makes this moment in history, in my view, archetypally the same dynamics are repeating, but what's different right now is there's more and more people doing what you're doing, holding this level of consciousness all over the world because we have and we're beginning to learn from history. We're beginning to understand the pattern. We kind of know where it goes. We know
Mm.
the evil that humans have been doing and are wanting to continue to do. And we're starting to get the lesson. We're starting to get the teaching. It's like, oh, wait, I should care about you now. And like
Mm.
that little shift is, I think, ultimately what's going to take us through this time, wherever it might lead.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions if you wanted to share some things beforehand, but I want to, are you ready for my questions?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, like in the context of maybe people not understanding like how this works, like I had a lot of questions when I spoke to you, and I've been also talking to my friend Diana, who I'm also going to be having a conversation with soon. She's an astrologer who lives in Ramallah in the West Bank. Like my questions are like, where does this food come from, and why is it so expensive, and things like that, right? We don't necessarily have to get into all of that. um, it's an interesting conversation, but there's a lot of prices being jacked. Currently, there's like a gang that's kind of the liaison between Israel and the Palestinian people accepting the food and distributing it, and there's a lot going on there. It's not easy to get resources. There are resources, and it's minimal and it's very expensive within Gaza. That's just, we can educate more about that, but I wanted to express that. The question that I asked that I think a lot of people might be concerned with is when you're making connections with these families, how do you know you're not being scammed? I befriended one well-known Palestinian journalist on Instagram. She's well known. And then I saw her on Facebook. I'm like, cool, let me befriend her. She accepted my friend request. I'm like, oh, how cool. And then she sent me a message saying she's needing money. And I, looked into it and I realized this was a scam. So I would love for you to share what is it that you guys have done to make sure that you're actually building real human relationships and not being scammed.
Yeah. This has been so foundational. And I would say, because this is actually what we're doing is something that anyone can do because of Instagram, and that anyone can, families are reaching out to people all the time. You can reach out to a family, make a connection and support, and may have a huge impact on a family, even just by sharing their story on your platform,
Mm,
right? But the thing that, one of the things that compelled me to set up all our relations is because so many people were turning away from that opportunity, immediately sort of dismissing it, or were cautious of it because they thought, well,
right.
what if it's a scam? And you're absolutely correct that, as you know, in any situation like this, there are people that are taking advantage of this situation. There are people that have scammed, and they're not even in Gaza, but they've created these fundraising pages, and they've taken people's money. So that was one of the very foundational things that we wanted to provide, was verification. How do we verify these families? And it's not too difficult, and about like really a three-part thing that we do, we've done with every single family, and that anyone else that we do support, certainly that we send money directly to, we always do these checks. And the first is a copy of their ID. uh, it is a bit of a phenomenon with Palestinians, is that because they're so reliant, they always have to carry their ID on them through
That's
all
right. Wow.
endless checkpoints. Like, it's almost
Wow. Yeah.
heard of that, even though these families have lost everything, you can bet your bottom dollar that they've still got
I
their
have their
ID.
idea with them. Ah, it's fascinating.
It's
Wow.
wild, right? So I mean, so yeah,
Sure.
so they'll and again, we spoke about this, Ari, that when it's not a scam, which most of the time it's not, when it's not, they're more than likely to be very forthcoming with this information. Say, absolutely, they'll always say, "Oh, that's your right. That's your right. Yes. What do you need?" So, the ID. The second one is like a WhatsApp or ideally Telegram or Signal location. So these apps provide like live locations of where they are. And these are, as far as I've understood it, this is pretty hard to fake. But as well as that,
Right,
also
kind of fun. Okay.
a third, yeah, to show that they are in Gaza. And the third and final one is to show a video message of them saying, "Hello, Georgia," or whoever you are, and to show their surroundings, right? To show that they are, that they are in Gaza or just wherever they are. So those three altogether, becomes pretty airtight. Like you can't, like I've had one experience before all our relations when one of those was missing, and it enabled there to be
Mm,
that deception. So this really helps, and we've learned a lot. There's a couple of other grassroots organizations similar to us, that started in the US. They're not functioning as much now. But we learned a lot from them. It was great because they started a few months before us. So we've all been kind of supporting each other because this is one of the first ways, like it's the first hurdle that people
right.
fall at, that when wanting to kind of become directly involved and supportive and intimate with families in Gaza. So yeah, but just by virtue of that, it's like we've done that verification, we're in contact with these families consistently. There's that trust that opens up, which is good, really helpful. So yeah.
Saturn Neptune dimension is like I'm gonna be duped. It's like that's the
Oh,
whole I want to love, I want to care, but if I don't have boundaries, how do I know that I'm not being taken advantage of? And so then people go in the other extreme and they're just very protected. So
yes.
we had the two dualities of sort of naivety, but also a sort of apathetic, I'm just gonna close off because I can't trust anyone, or so many people are taking advantage of others. So I love that you have that system, and that also really instills a lot of trust that people can recognize. Not only is this really about like real helping people in a real, authentic, direct way that expands beyond just these 21 families, we can trust all our relations that they're grounded, right? They're
Mhm.
solid. There's a
Yeah.
clear vetting system for this, which is, that's great. So
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I want to hear if there's anything more that you want to share, and I also want to hear from you what is the best way that people can support. So I imagine it's about donations. So these donations then go into helping these people buy food. Yeah, so tell us more about how the best way for people to support.
Yeah, yeah, so we're mainly active on Instagram, and again, such as that you shared, Ari, at the foundation of this is it's so important to us to just keep sharing the family stories. So we share a lot of all of our family
I
stories,
love
and
that. I love that.
it's so key,
It's so
and
Jupiter and Cancer, your family story. It's so real. It's so real. How could you not feel like, oh, there's an authentic, real human experience happening here? You're reading a novel of something that's authentically happening and unfolding, you know?
yeah, you speak so beautifully to how like Jupiter can like tend itself to kind of, they say the long-winded Sagittarius, right? The
Right.
tendency to over-explain or embellish. Well, when it comes to the situation in Gaza,
Mm,
you could speak about everything under the sun as to what an absolute abomination this is and a crisis it is. But if you just let one family speak for themselves, I mean,
it's so much more real.
and it opens that window entirely to the entire daily crisis. So
I,
yeah,
I,
I would say yeah, all our relations, Instagram is where we're sharing a lot, and so it can be direct donations, but maybe and that really does support us. And I would say as well, a monthly donation are the two fundraising platforms that we use, which are GoFundMe and Chuffed. They both allow for a monthly donation option. So even if you can only give like a little and often, that makes a huge difference. It also really helps us with the consistency of our organization. We're doing these daily food kitchens. We're providing monthly rent. Some land is rented out. What is left of some of these what it remains of the sort of structure or infrastructure or systems in Gaza. All of these things just help us keep this consistency going for the families and the security. So monthly donations most welcome. But even those that aren't able to do that, again, this really does come back to heart human connection. Like what you're doing here, Ari. you are, using your voice, your energy, your heart to share what we're doing. So everyone's platform, everyone's voice, everyone's heart
Yeah.
space, everyone that it matters. So if you're using your platform, your even little Facebook profile to say, hey, like check out this project and what they're doing, and you're vouching for that, that has made a huge difference for us, huge.
Mm.
And if you're doing a small fundraiser and you care about what's going on in Gaza, and you want to find, okay, which organization do I give to? Of course, it helps immensely if it can go to a smaller organization like us. Um, but it has the benefits too, that instead of it going to, let's say, Oxfam or someone else, you can reach out to us and get more fundraising, small stories from us so that you can share with your supporters like where the money's going. We'll support you with that. So all these things matter greatly to us. We are also at the moment too looking for a few more family liaisons.
Oh, great.
Yes, because I still have like 6 or 7 families, and my operations manager, Valeria, she is all Scorpio and Capricorn like me. And every day she's like, Georgia, you, this isn't sustainable. You're supposed to be directing the organization. And I'm still just
Mm.
that daily contact. And of course, I'll keep in contact with these families regardless, but it's the practicality, of course, of just keeping that
So,
communication
for those
tension going.
listening, what does it take to be a what does it mean to be a liaison? What does that entail?
It means being fairly available for, I would say, like a conversation or interaction with that family every couple days. And then we do have quite a good system in place where you will then, whatever those, really connecting with what their needs are, and where they're at learning their story, um, and then sharing that with one of our team members that can then report back to us, and then we will facilitate that as best we can. We also, if you are a family liaison for us, there will be support. We have fortnightly meetings where we all come together. There's, mental health support, because of course you do go through a lot when you're in direct contact with
What's
those in Gaza.
Fortnite? Every
Oh,
two
every
weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that bi-weekly thing, is that like, what is that? Like, yeah. Yeah, every 2 weeks. I know that you wanted to share your synagogue story as well.
That's it.
Yes.
Me too. So, yeah, I mean, last night at synagogue, my friend Rabbi Steve it prompted the community to ask this question, what does it mean for you to be Jewish right now? What feels good for you? What's hard for you about it? And the synagogue as a whole isn't necessarily like, you're not going to see a lot of people talking about people in Gaza. Um, but what was meaningful for me about that question was it created a space because everyone here has a Jewish identity. Like everyone in the synagogue has a Jewish identity, right? That it means something different, but we're all like, we all have that in us. But what does it mean for you? And what does it mean for me so it was cool to have that opportunity to share my truth and also to hear other people. So like one woman said, yeah, I feel really scared. I'm seeing the rise of anti-Semitism. I saw someone put a flag on a bridge that said Free Palestine. I felt really scared because to a lot of Jews, that Free Palestine means anti-Semitism. It
Yeah.
just is like that's a thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm like, wow, that's like I'm hearing that. I'm sitting a few rows away, and I shared for me. Um, I've never been a person to wear jewelry or do anything to make myself look. I already look Jewish enough, but like to like overtly. But it's funny because I was thinking if I were to begin doing something like that, there would be more of a vulnerability around how that would be perceived. Because right now, a lot of people are perceiving, okay, Jewishness equals you hate Arabs. Jewish-ish equals the actions of the Israeli government, right? And then there is also a rise of anti-Semitism as well, linked to that. Is it's such an interesting and complex reality where I think at this time everyone's identity, like what does it mean to be you? What does it mean to come from where you come from? It's never felt more. I've never felt more reflective of me being a Jew, not in terms of like finding my identity, but like what it means for me emotionally, authentically right now, living alive in the world right now. Because because I'm a Jew, when I speak for the things that I speak about, I have Jewish friends that are deeply disappointed in me, who believe
Mm.
that I'm contributing and stoking anti-Semitism, right? And then, of course, other friends that are really happy that I'm doing that. Lo bishmi, Jewish people say, not in my name,
Mm.
representing the government does not represent me, not in my name, right? There's such a mix of deep emotional, and I just think this is a part of the healing of the time right now, where we're almost like Neptune, Saturn. We're just dissolving all of these arbitrary boundaries, and ways that we keep each other separate from one another, because we each have our own history as a people. We each have our own journey that has led us to where we are right now. But we gotta care about each other. We gotta actually get beyond our own ethnocentric bubble and just care about each other. And so that lady in the synagogue that saw the Free Palestine sign and feels scared, feels threatened. I get it because I also grew up in that world and I understand exactly what that's like for her. And I could also promise you, she doesn't know one Palestinian person. I'm certain of it. Because if
Mm.
she did, she would actually realize, oh, there's people just care about them. I get it. They
Mm.
just care about them. And that doesn't invalidate her concerns and her fear, right?
Something that just came through really strongly as well is around you kept bringing up about care, and I just really want to share that it's and I'm just so grateful to you for platforming this and for sharing this because it brings the astrology into the real, this is again, I think this Neptune moving into Aries, we it's making like it's about not it's about being about it, it's about doing, but like how all this spiritual work that we've done, all this, expanding our hearts and widening our scope of compassion for all living beings, how are we gonna put that into action now? And now the acute suffering of so many people around us, not least, I mean, in the US, it's just the occupation always comes home, and look at what is happening
Mhm.
now on US soil, like every day increasingly worse. And so community care, you keep speaking to this, and this is that Cancerian piece, is that community care is the way forward and is what is going to save. No one's coming to save us. We need, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And
Big time.
that's absolutely it. And it's again that sort of Saturn, that bursting of the bubble that Saturn pertains, like corresponds to the institutional level of society, and the two most, the biggest industries in the world of the pharmaceutical industry and war. Those are the two most profitable industries in the world. And both of those two industries rely on us. Well, the war relies on us being against each other, and that violence and that lack of care and that lack of humanization for each other. Otherwise, the endless war cannot continue. Like it would stop in its tracks. But the pharmaceutical industry, and this is, I think, a really beautiful piece, maybe like that I'm glad that to bring up, is that, of course, Jupiter in Cancer, like we come into Cancer, and the mothering instinct is to go, how can I care for others? How can I care about, be more mothering and more caring for the people around me? But what about we also need to be very like that muscle is flexed by first being very attuned to like how do we need to be mothered and how do we need to be cared for? And the pharmaceutical industry is the success of that Saturn machine is based on us not caring about ourselves and being very disconnected from our own physical needs to the point that we need a pill just so that we can carry on functioning in society because we're just, do you understand what I mean? There's such a deep lack of care from within. And I think so I just yeah I and again I just really thank you for this opportunity because I also hope that this shares how like what we do matters because I don't know where this path's leading me, but all I know is that I think we just have to keep coming back to that truth of okay, people are suffering now, and what I do matters. And on the soul level, it's like again, I suppose it's that Saturn integrity thing. It's like what do you do even when no one's watching, or even if it doesn't go down in history, it doesn't like what from the heart space, what are you contributing and doing as a human being? I think it matters. It really matters.
Absolutely.
It entirely matters.
What you're saying is so important, and I think this is one of the biggest anchors that's growing in me, and what you're helping bring forward as well. So I want this to be a message that's conveyed as clearly as I can.
Mm, mm.
you spoke about like we are the ones that we've been waiting for, and just the to make this really real and accessible, it's because the actual healing of the pains of the world are actually through our actions, through our choices, through how we're shifting our relationships, and it's happening on the ground.
Mhm.
It's something that we're doing because we want to. And it's like the bridge to all that's happening and the beauty that we are moving into ultimately is this. And the thought arose, like even though we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, when you really care, the miracle that's emerging right now is that love will never want others to suffer. And so it's like it's different than a self-sacrificial or stressful, fearful, gotta fight this or scream about something that really doesn't help ultimately. But letting that impulse of love that we all have inside of us that we often just don't know what to do about it. So it's hard, but then I think 99% of the time we just don't know what to do with it. It feels again too abstract. What does it matter anyway? It's you know what I'm saying? So it's just easier to kind of disconnect ourselves. But there's a very real, imminent, authentic, direct way in which we can extend the love that we are and grow it. And that love is powerful. That's where the miracles happen. It's like love as a caring expression just like takes us and says, you don't have to suffer. And it doesn't mean we're controlling conditions and that we're going to somehow save and tomorrow Gaza will be full of rainbows. But it's like this, as this energy grows, the we're actually realizing the power and the strength and the authority of that power that is actually stronger than all of the evil that is currently expressing. And I think it's more real, it's more directive, it's more tangible than we understand. But it's all we get to know that I think as we practice it. So thank you, Georgia, for coming, for sharing, for educating us. Links below. Again, donation directly. How? Here's a question that I had. How much does a bag of food cost for a family? Like, how much?
Well, oh, okay. So, like the average vegetable parcel, for example, because there are still some remaining functioning farms in Gaza. So that's how that's happening, but it's very expensive. So an average, like a bag parcel that we give out is $120. That has like a couple of kilos of about four different vegetables. Like it's not much, but it's something, and it sustains a family for a good few days. But we also have to pay, unfortunately, about 40% withdrawal commission on that because there's so little
Wow.
cash in Gaza. So I believe, let me do my little calculation here. That's actually $200 per bag, right? But that makes a huge difference, especially on that nourishing level to a family, right? Everyone in Gaza is malnourished on some level. So
And there's a shortage of protein. There's you got some flour and lentils, as I understand it, but not a lot. And there's not a lot of protein sources.
no, no, no. And if you can find protein, it's like $250 for a bag of 1 kilo of meat.
Yeah.
And some people fish, but you get the Israel shoot at those that are fishing, so it's incredibly dangerous. So, anything protein wise is very expensive. Flour is about $250 for a bag, a 25-kilo bag. It was $800 a couple months ago. It's crazy. So it's all extremely expensive. But yeah, that we are feeding people. We're managing to make it happen. Like our food kitchen costs us about, let me do the calculation again. Our daily food kitchen, where we feed hundreds a day, that costs us $875 a day to keep going. But it is also, and I didn't tell you this, Ari, this is this community-led beauty. The children that would come to collect the food for their families with their pots, they were waiting around like for ages, just watching Abdo do his thing and cook. I love Abdo. He's my dude. He's my buddy. He's so great. Like I've been in touch with him for like 14 months. He's just great.
Wow.
Him and his family. I love them so much. Um, and yeah, these kids, and they just started to. I said to them, hey, Abdo, one day, I was like, can we provide a snack for them or something? So we provide a little snack. We've now got this little sound system. They sing songs, they dance, they play. There's this
Wow.
huge gathering of kids. It's because and there's no school anymore, right? So that's kind of like their ritual, that daily coming together. They have a snack, they have some watermelon often, and they sing and they dance and they share their voices, they share their poems. I mean, it's just beautiful. And so it's bloody worth it, even though, it's incredibly expensive to keep running every day, but it's so important. So yeah,
And
those are just
it's so again, like in terms of like knowing what we're doing, that's where your money's going. That's what thing costs. So, it just what an easy thing that we can all do. From that place of okay, this is directly benefiting people's lives. And I want to say too, there's another dimension. There's a lot of danger for men now because they have to, in general, to get the little distribution that is coming in from Israel. They go to these dedicated areas,
mm,
masses of people getting food, but they're getting shot at.
completely.
I mean, there are men going to get food that die, trying to get food for their family or get deeply wounded. So what all our relations is doing is creating a much safer environment where people can get fed. Because it's
Exactly.
very dangerous to kind of go the existing Capricorn structure for how we know and we're told on the media people are getting food is very dangerous.
Yes, we're literally sending out constant bulletins to like constant notes to our family to say, please do they because there's some of them have risked it or their uncle oh, don't go like that's what we're here for. Like that's the foundational thing that we've committed to and that we will do any like we will go hard on the fundraising. We'll do whatever we can do so that they do not have to step foot in those distribution points because it is known and it's evidenced that IDF soldiers have been ordered to basically just shoot whatever, just
Yeah.
shoot.
So if
So
this video gets even, on the lower end, just 1,000 views, it's,
mm,
lower end of what I usually get. If everyone literally just gave $5, think about it. From what you've just heard from Georgia, imagine what $5 times 1,000, $5,000, how many people that would feed, how much safety that would create,
yes,
how much
yeah,
hope that would create.
absolutely. And
I,
speaking
I
of,
encourage everyone, sincerely, I invite you. Look at that little one. Hello, Leo.
Leo, you haven't met him yet, have you? Do you want to come say hi? Yeah, and Aris, you're going to be on
You're
YouTube.
gonna be on a
Oh
YouTube
no,
channel. So
Leo's Aris is backing out of the room now.
I understand. um,
Aris and Ari.
everyone just gave $5 at minimum, right? If you're unsure, please explore that edge. Because imagine if we all did that, how incredibly impactful that would be, just so powerful. I would
Yes,
be so grateful.
it's huge, Ari. That would fund our food kitchen for a week, which is a huge
It's
thing.
huge.
Or it would feed. I mean, essentially, whether it goes through vegetable parcels, food parcels, other things, it will feed hundreds for a week or
Yep.
2 weeks. So yeah, thank you
Um,
so much, Ari. This means so much. Thank you for using your platform.
all
Okay.
right. Much love to
Sorry
you.
about this. So much love to you, Ari. Thank you so much, and thank you to all your listeners.